Hey, good people. Today we are going to be talking about problem identification, planning, and intervention. So we're going to go ahead and get started with the concept of problem identification. Now, if you recall, I believe that I had spoke with you all in another lecture about being helping professionals. And when people come to see you, they are already in a state of panic or worry because they are in need of, or they are injured, or they are looking for, they need help in regards to, they're in need of some type of assistance. So when they come to see you, they are in a position where they know they need some assistance and they're looking to you to be that person to provide that for them. But one of the things that we don't want to overlook when we're working with our client, consumer, or patient is we want to look at their internal resources along with the external resources that we may be offering to them. Now, when I talk about the internal resources, I'm thinking specifically about Maslow's hierarchy of need. And if you're not familiar with that, Maslow's hierarchy of need, it basically talks about there are deficient needs. He has his need kind of, his theory is kind of made in a triangle. And he says that there are deficient needs on the bottom, meaning that there are some areas in our lives where the need is not being met. But then we get to the top of the triangle, it's called self-actualization, our being need. I have now become, and I am now at this place of self-actualization, meaning that I'm at this place where I recognize my strengths and I have the tools available to me, or I know how to access the tools so that I can have success in addressing the issue that's brought me in to see this counselor, therapist, worker, case manager. Excuse me. So when we're talking about, again, working with our clients and the problem that they're bringing, or problem identification, we want to make sure that we address their internal needs as well as the internal resources as well as the external resources. Now, the external resources, those are going to be the resource information or referrals that you make, that you provide for them. But also it could indicate resources that they've already acknowledged or received some assistance from. So we want to be mindful that we kind of do a clear assessment on where our client, consumer, or patient may be in the helping process. Now, when we talk about the helping process, some of the things that we want to make sure that we are doing is when we're talking with our client, consumer, or patient, we want to make sure that we have some specific information that we're obtaining from them. Now, we did not talk about this in a previous lecture, so I'm just going to briefly mention it to you all when we talk about completing that assessment. Now, we did talk about completing a full assessment with a mini mental status exam. But one tool that we did not discuss is using an echo map. And when we use an echo map, that's basically taking everything that the client, consumer, or patient has told us or said to us, information that we've obtained during their assessment, and we're just kind of mapping it out to see that we can identify, again, the client's internal resources as well as external resources that have been used. So when we get to that point that we've identified everything, this is where we need to begin planning with our client, consumer, or patient what it is that needs to happen or steps that need to be taken for this person to reach this level of empowerment, to reach this level of self-actualization, that they find some type of resolution, shall we say, to the problem that they brought into us. The key to all of this when we're talking about working in the planning process is that the client must be involved along the way in the planning process. Excuse me, there is here the statement in your textbooks in chapter 10, excuse me, it says all planning efforts should be done in collaboration with the client, even if he or she appears apathetic and disinterested. Why do you think we want to include the client in the planning process? That was my dog Queen. She had to give an answer to that. So excuse her. But why do you think we need to include the client in the planning process? One of the reasons that we include the client in the planning process is because this is their goal. This is the problem that brought them in to see you. It's not a problem that we made up and we just saw someone in the street and say, oh, I pick you to be my client. But this is an issue that the client brought to you that they are looking for some assistance in resolution. So we want to make sure that we include the client in this goal setting process. When we're talking about including the client in the goal setting process, the book lays out for us specifically four priorities that we should have when we're looking at working with our client in this planning stage. The first priority says that the client determines what the problem, the client determines what are the problems or the concerns that need to be addressed. The social worker or the human service worker, the helping professional, offers insight. You are merely the navigator. You are not the driver. Be mindful of that. You're giving the insight and you're giving recommendations. The third one talks about that the problems are reviewed. You and the client review the problems together. You discuss together the issues that need to be addressed. And fourth, and most importantly, is that there's a collaboration, there's a partnership. That working relationship is established as you begin to talk about what are some of the goals that you would like to address. Now, when we talk about addressing the goals, we have to be mindful of this. And I want you to think about it from your perspective. When you have a desire to do something, you don't want to be overwhelmed in all the things that need to be done with it. But you want to try to schedule yourself. You want to try to pace yourself so that there is success along the way in reaching or working towards your main goal. So when we talk about working with our clients, consumers, or patients, we want to make sure that we kind of limit ourselves to having 3 overall goals at one time. So in doing that, the way that we're going to look at that is we're going to have 1 long-term goal and 2 short-term goals. Now, the difference that we have here, we have our long-term goals basically are the goals that is going to be our overall arching goal, that we want to reach, that we want to say, okay, I've accomplished this. And then our short-term goals are things that we can accomplish or things that need to be addressed right now. The reason that we kind of break that up a little bit from our long-term goals and our short-term goals is because, again, we want to set ourselves up for success. We want to set our clients up for success, and we want to help them see the whole pathway to achieving things. And what does that feel like? What does that look like to our client, consumer, or patient? What does it look like for you when you think about goals you have established for yourself? So when we're talking about our goals, and writing our plan, we want to make sure that when we're writing our goals, that our goals are very clear, that our goals give specific direction. Our goals are things that when we're writing them, we want them to have some action to them. We want to make sure that our goals are written with action words, with verbs. So there is a section in your book on page 239 that it gives you some vocabulary terms that you can look at when we talk about action-oriented terminology. You want to set your client, consumer, or patient up for success. And the way that you're going to do that, again, is you're going to put some action to it. You're going to have them look at this from the perspective of, this is what I need to do, or this is what someone needs to do in order to reach the next level. All of this being said, when we talk about the plan, we got to make sure that our client is motivated to work with us, that our client is motivated to do the work that needs to be done in order that we achieve, or that we attain, or that the client attains that overall arching goal, as well as the 2 short-term goals. So when we're talking about our goals, again, we want them to have some action to them, something that the client is going to do. Client will fill in the blank. Client is to observe. Client is to research. Client is to begin looking into. We want to make sure that we give them some specific direction. When we're giving our clients the goal, the overall goal, what is it that I want to do? It's good to have at least 1 or 2 action steps under each goal, or objectives is kind of one way that we may refer to them. And again, these are going to be action oriented. What is the client going to do? Our action steps or our objectives in reaching the goal, they have to be measurable. Okay, and by measurable, I mean that we have to be able to see the difference from what was to what is right now based on the action steps or based on the activity that we've done. So again, be mindful that you want it to be measurable. Let's say, for example, if we have a client who is homeless and your short-term goal is that the client secure temporary housing. That's the short-term goal, secure temporary housing. Our action step or our objective may be client to apply for housing assistance. A second objective or action step may be client to contact emergency shelter. So when we do those things, to contact the emergency shelter, to apply for housing assistance, the measurement comes in when the client reports back, yes, I contacted the emergency shelter and I'm moving in tomorrow. When the client reports back, yes, I completed the application for housing assistance. That's how we know that the action steps are measurable. Okay, so let's be mindful of that. When we're talking about doing our goals and the action steps, we want to make sure that we have a good time frame in mind. We don't want to set the client up for failure. We don't want to say, okay, you're going to go look for permanent or temporary housing for someone who is homeless. And okay, so you'll have that finished, we'll say maybe about a month or two. That's too long, good people. We got to be realistic about the goals that are being set and the timeline and the time frame that we're going to be providing for the client, consumer, or patient to work within. Be mindful also, good people, that when you are working with your client, consumer, or patient, you also will be able to participate in those action steps that are on your contract. When we talk about the action steps, if it is client to receive referral services for dental care, well, where do I get the referral services from? Well, you, the worker, are going to provide the client with referral information to seek dental care. So on the contract, the action step may say, client to receive referral services for dental care. And when it says who is responsible for that task, that's going to be you, the helping professional. So we always want to make sure that when we are doing our plan and when we are writing our contract, that we have things that are actionable, that we have measurable outcomes and or action steps, and that we have a good solid time frame, something that is realistic in seeing things done. And then we also have someone who is going to be responsible for meeting those action steps and working towards the goals. One of the other things we don't want to leave off of our plan is we want to make sure that we have an outcome. What happened? What happened from beginning to end? Beginning was we made the plan. These are the goals. Here's the action steps. This is the time frame. This is who's responsible for getting it done. What's the outcome? Well, the outcome is going to be what the client reports to you, or maybe the report that you receive back from a referring agency. The outcome is always going to be measurable in that also we're going to look at what happened in the beginning and what happens in the end. The client came in homeless. At the end, they successfully applied for housing assistance. They successfully entered short-term emergency shelter. And a third one could be that they successfully found employment, which of course adds into the whole idea of becoming steady with housing and becoming no longer being homeless is what I want to say. So these are the things we got to think about when we're creating our plan and our contract. When we have a contract, usually you may find that at the end of your goal sheet or your client plan, and that contract is basically just outlining for the client and the case manager or helping professional the timeline that we're looking at in making sure that we reach the stated goals, but knowing that our goal sheet, that this plan, that it is a living document, that it is flexible, and there may be some things that need to be tweaked in it, because inevitably there may be a barrier, there may be a hindrance that you or the client may experience when trying to obtain the overall goal. So we want to be mindful of these things when we're talking about problem identification, when our client comes in and they're already in need of, they're seeking, and we're trying to look at how are we developing this plan for them. Now that we have our plan together, our goal sheet together and working with our client, it's not at the point that we're not at the point where we're just going to release our client into the wild and say, go be free, go reach your goals. We still are going to be following up with and working with our clients. So clients, consumers, and patients. So we get into this place where we're looking at treatment and intervention. Excuse me. When we're talking about treatment and intervention, I just want us to be mindful that we are in a position where we, the helping professionals at this stage within our skill level at this point, we are not going to be providing direct treatment per se to our clients, consumers, or patients. We are not going to be providing direct diagnosis to our clients, consumers, or patients. We are assisting them on their journey through the treatment process. So I want to make sure that I make that clear before we go on to discuss some of the treatment options. When we're thinking about working with our client with the goals that we have established and everything that they've worked towards, that they've spoken with us about, one of the things that we have to be mindful of, and we talked about this early on in the session, but we have to be mindful of cultural competence with our clients, consumers, and patients. And we want to make sure that we are mindful of the internal culture that may be dictating for our client, consumer, or patient their foundation, their level of their values and their beliefs and what they hold near and dear. And how is that going to impact their motivation as they're working with you, again, through this journey of becoming free, becoming self-actualized, becoming empowered in addressing some of the issues that brought them in to see you. So our client motivation is a big step that we have to look at. What's going on in their thought process. Again, we're not diagnosing and we're not giving any type of clinical assistance, but we just want to be mindful of what our client, consumer, or patient may be dealing with every day from an environmental perspective, within their environment, within their thought process, their values and beliefs. Because some clients may come to us truly motivated to see change happen, and they are ready to start working. And then there are some clients that may come who have some resistance. And it's not that they don't want to see change happen, but it's just that when we begin to talk about change, then they start to say, or they start to think, well, is this really something that I want to see happen for me right now? Do I really want to impact my life? And am I ready for the change that's about to come? And forgive my dog, Queen, y'all. I don't know why she has to sing a chorus tonight, but apparently she has to give y'all a song. I apologize again. But it must be a squirrel that is flying around or something outside. But anyway, as we think about our clients, consumers, and patients, when we're working with them, we have to know that sometimes they may get stuck in this healing process, in addressing their needs and addressing the things that are going on for them. And so they may require just a little pick-me-up from you. They may need you just to talk with them a little bit to kind of motivate them a little bit more in the direction that they need to be going in. Again, we're not going to be holding hands. We are just navigating the helping engine. We're navigating the process for our clients, consumers, or patients. So our textbook does talk about, and it gives us 4 tenets when we're looking at motivational interviewing and what that means when we're implementing something like that with our clients, consumers, or patients. Motivational interviewing is basically that you, the helping professional, are reminding the patient through the types of questions that you ask and through the discussion that you have with them, you're reminding them of the internal resources that they have. Remember, we talked about that in the previous chapter, the internal resources, the strengths that they may have within, and how are we going to combine those internal resources, those inner strengths, with the outward or the external resources that you, the worker, provide for them. Now, as we go on throughout the chapter, there's a couple of different theories that our book goes over, and I'm going to reference those, but I'm not going to dwell on them too much. There's 2, though, specifically that I want to talk about. There is, let me just, before I get into the theories, I want to first briefly address the coping skills training. When we talk about coping skills training, and I'm going to read this to you from the book. The book says that it provides interventions that strengthens the client's existing skills and teaches new strategies. When we're talking about the coping skills, that kind of ties in a little bit with that motivational interviewing, that we use the tools that we know, our skills, in asking the types of questions and thinking about things beyond the obvious so that we can tap into our clients, again, their internal strengths. What is it that they have going on that I can tap into, that I can assist them in building up that library of resources that they have in regards to, again, different coping skills, different things that they can try. Now, as I stated, there are some theories that our textbook kind of goes over, but the one that I want to jump to and the one that I want to conclude this lecture with is the solution-focused brief therapy. Now, again, good people, let me remind you, we at this skill level are not providing therapeutic intervention as far as being a counselor or a therapist, but we are continuing as navigators. And as a navigator with this solution-focused therapy, this specifically is we're looking at where the client is starting, what the starting point is that they have. And the book says that we're looking at the assumptions that the client has within them and the strengths and the resources that they have that we can kind of build upon. And how do we create new solutions for the client, consumer, or patient? So that's where, again, what we're talking about, where the client starts and what can we build upon. Now, our textbook gives us 7 different assumptions that we can look at that we want to kind of be mindful of. And the very first one is so important. It says it is not necessary to understand the origins of the problem. You weren't there. You didn't experience the problem. You didn't see when it happened. You didn't have the same emotional response to it. So you don't necessarily need to understand the complete origins of it to be able to provide some direction to our client, consumer, or patient and how to work through it. Okay, the second one, not all client problems need to be addressed. Everything that they come to you about is not an emergency. So we got to make sure that we try to help them understand what is going to be a priority when they come to see us in need of some direction in resolving a problem. The fifth one, very important. The client is the expert of their own life. Ooh, we got to meditate on that a little bit, y'all. The client is the expert. That means that we have to be respectful of their thought process, of their cultural experiences. We got to be respectful of their hesitations, as well as their accomplishments. They're the expert. So we have to remain teachable with our client when we're going through the process. The seventh one, if something works, come on, y'all. No need to reinvent the wheel. Keep using it. If it works for one thing, it may work for another. However, let me tell you, if something doesn't work, don't keep using it, y'all. Find a new pony, okay? If something doesn't work, think beyond the obvious and find something new. This is the lecture on problem identification, planning, treatment, and intervention. There's going to be some discussion questions for you to answer. I'm going to encourage you to not overlook the case studies in your textbook. Please make sure that you read over those and get some experience and some information from those case studies so that as we give you case studies for your assignments, then you'll be familiar with those as well. Again, there's going to be your discussion posts and assignments, and you know how to get in contact with me if you have any questions, comments, or concerns. I bid you love, peace, and soul. Y'all have a great day.